Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. I've been getting a little bit behind in my viewer request videos, so I thought I would take care of one of the more common groups of questions I get. And that pretty much has to do with the basics of working with acrylic. Not so much just cutting or welding it together, but questions involving sizes, choices of thicknesses, what materials to use to weld them together, all that sort of stuff. So I know I've covered a lot of this in many other videos, but I am going to attempt in the next 10 minutes to try and cover as much of it in this one video as possible. Mostly because it'll be a one-stop source for people, and if someone asks me another question, I can just refer them to this video. And also because I actually haven't really stuck it all together in one spot before, so it might actually be helpful for any of you guys who want to try your hand at it. So that said, welcome to the basics of working with acrylic. And first off, the most important thing is cutting to size. And you'll notice I use a table saw. It's not necessary, but you do need some form of power saw, a circular saw preferably. Don't try using a jigsaw or hand cutting any of it. You need very precise and square cuts. Now what I do is I have a stop here, and I measure each of the pieces, and I always cut all of one dimension that I require all in one go at one setting. So that way I'm not even relying on making sure I measured the right size again, because acrylic, the method I use for welding acrylic, which is methylene chloride, it is not forgiving. It doesn't cover any kind of gaps. Unlike when you work with glass, you silicone together, and silicone is thick and pasty and is quite capable of filling, a 1/16 or even up to an 1/8 inch gap in any kind of two joints. And when it cures, it still has really good strong strength. Now, of course, that doesn't go for when you're building really large tanks, but in anything basic that you're working on, it's perfectly fine. Acrylic needs a precise corner, a precise joint, and the best way of doing that is make sure everything's square and all the sizes are the same. Now, if you are just starting out, like this is the first thing you're planning on building, I actually don't recommend using methylene chloride. I would recommend using one of the Weld-On products, one of the more thick and viscous ones. Now, the active ingredient in all the Weld-Ons is methylene chloride as well, but they have other additives in it which thicken it up. And the higher the number you get, the thicker it gets. And when it gets thicker like that, it has a bit more of, I should say, an ability to handle small gaps and that sort of stuff. And you're more likely to be able to get a bubble-free joint. And like I said, if you're just starting out, I recommend it. I don't use it personally because I prefer the speed at which methylene chloride evaporates. And in this case, like I'm just putting together a small box here for an underground filter, and whether or not it holds water is completely irrelevant. I'm just going to try and do a reasonable job here, but it's not really necessary. Now, the other thing you'll notice is when I do the cut, I don't hesitate anywhere along. It's just one smooth stroke, because if you do take your time and you end up with like a little bit of a hesitation anywhere along the line, the blade will heat up the acrylic, and you'll end up with a small, not so much like a notch or anything, but it will be slightly different size because the blade will heat up the acrylic. And so you want a sharp blade, of course, and cut as smooth and as easy as possible. So that's pretty much the basics of cutting. And as you can see, I cut all the pieces all at once for each size, and as far as what sizes you need, this is going to be a box. I mean, pretty much they're all boxes. And to limit the inside joints, I cut the bottom as the bottom, so it'll be sitting down, and then I cut the two length pieces. And then the only thing that has to change in difference is the two ends have to be set inside by two thicknesses. So let's say the length of this, the width of this was 6 inches, and this is 1/8 inch acrylic. you'd have to move the the length for the inside inserts. They'd have to be shorter by 1/4, which is just 2 times 1/8. And that is all the pieces cut. And someone asked me prices for acrylic. I don't really like giving stuff like that out because I think Canada's probably one of the few things that we do that's cheaper than everybody else. Acrylic is quite inexpensive here. A full sheet of 4 feet by 8 feet of 1/8 inch acrylic is about $120. So actually, this box I'm building here, you're looking at probably about $8. So it is relatively inexpensive. So as you can see here, I am using a syringe to apply my methylene chloride. You can see the applicator that usually comes with it is up to just above the syringe there now. It's fine using that. I find sometimes they will leak though, and any kind of drip is just a pain. And also, they tend to sometimes give a little bit more than I want, or the opposite is they'll plug up. And you find it putting more pressure on it, trying to get it to work. And of course you could end up with a big squirt of methylene chloride, which ruins the whole piece. So I prefer using a syringe, but you probably won't be able to buy that. Depending upon your supplier, most likely you're going to get one of those applicator bottles. And they're, like I said, I've worked with them for years. I don't like them, but not mostly because now I can use this, and it's much simpler for me. And you get much more precise amounts, and also because the tip of the syringe has a bevel on one side, like a notch cut, like it's cut at an angle, and I put the angle towards the joint, so it gives me actually a much better application, whereas the tip of the applicator is just cut straight, and that is obviously less not as easy to put it where you want it to go. Now, as far as the rest of this is glues up or go, I've covered this so many times. Again, the reason why I use methylene chloride is it's much quicker. It's much simpler to apply, and you don't have to wait too long for it to dry. And that's, again, the reason why I like it. What else should I cover here? I'm trying to think of some of the other questions that people have asked. Definitely use 1/8 first. It is the simplest of them to get, and the easiest to get a good joint with, and the easiest to cut, of course. As you go up in thicknesses, you are going to 1/4 is not so bad, but when you start getting up into like 3/8, ½ inch, that sort of stuff, it gets quite a bit more expensive for starters, and also it is much more difficult to get a good joint. So that's probably the most important thing. Now, as far as sizes, if you want to build something that's going to hold water, like a small desktop aquarium, 1/8 inches I don't recommend. It is way too flexible, which is another reason why I like using glass for aquariums instead of acrylic. So you're probably going to, like the one I just built recently is about 1/4 inch. And that's perfectly fine for things around, the 10 to 15 gallon size, as long as it's not too tall, or as long as there's any free span of acrylic isn't too long as well. You can obviously put cross supports in it quite easily, and that helps take some of that bow out. But I don't build aquariums out of acrylic. I'm definitely a glass guy for that. I don't mind small desktop stuff because acrylic is much easier to work with, and it's lighter, and as long as the depth and volume of water isn't too great, I have actually no real issues with it, so I prefer doing that. I think I've covered everything. Again, if I've missed something, definitely leave a comment below. And also, if you have ideas for other viewer requests, I know I get a little bit behind on doing them, but definitely leave a comment below for something like that as well. And as always, if you like this style of video, please leave a like if you feel like it, a subscription if you do as well. And I said I'll get to as many of the viewer requests as I can. Some are a bit more difficult to do. I am actually going to get to a long time one, which is the ebb and flow filter. I've been having requests for that for quite a while. But that's a little bit more of a bigger build, and I didn't quite have enough time for it this week, so it'll probably be in the next week or two, and I'll definitely get to that as well. And like I said, leave your comments. I definitely get to answering all those. I definitely appreciate them all too, because I do get a bunch of ideas for various things for that. So hopefully this covers everything, and I can use this as a reference, but we'll see how that goes. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video, and bye for now.